all of a sudden, the words are up on the screen, so that's how it's going to look.
Dang.
Yeah. Okay, Jared, why don't you come up to the witness table and bring up whoever from your team you want to bring up? Okay, let's just wait 1 minute, get a couple more members back in here. Yeah. Yes, Vice Chair Kagan.
While we're waiting, just so you know, the closed caption is the first step. The General Assembly has been talking about this for a long time, but trying to make the General Assembly more accessible to those with disabilities.
Nice.
Okay, well, why don't we just get started? So why don't, first of all, welcome, and from the State Board of Elections, why don't you tell us who you are?
Sure. Hey. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting us here. Jared Demaris, the state. Oh, can I move this? Or I didn't know if the last time it was like these things were like, okay. Sure. Okay. Thank you. So, okay. Well, thank you for inviting me. Jared Demaris, State Administrator of Elections, for the record, with me.
Hi, Catherine Berry, the Deputy Administrator at the State Board of Elections.
Exactly. So I just wanted to say, so I'm going to start talking about the successes of the 2024 presidential elections, and as we also prepare for the 2026 gubernatorial elections. First, I just want to commend my state board members for their leadership and working as a team to moving forward as a unit for new regulations and policies. Each member brought a unique perspective representing their own political dynamics and Maryland as a whole. I'm appreciative of the time and effort that they have put into our agency. And, it is a dedicated task for them to do that. And working as a bipartisan team really shows that election administration is above politics. So I just wanted to thank them on that. With us here, I have some SBE staff present in the room here. We can start with Melissa, and then just want to introduce yourself and your title to everyone here.
Sure. I'm Melissa Dorsey, and I'm the Assistant Deputy for Election Policy. Thanks for having us.
Crystal.
I'm Crystal McGinn. I'm the Director of Voter Registration and Election Operations at the State Board of Elections.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? If so,
I can't see or hear you.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
why don't
sorry.
you stand up and maybe
Stand up.
come up to the table just so we know who's here from, so you're near a speaker. Otherwise,
Sure.
you can't hear or see you. We're streaming, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Crystal McGinn. I'm the Director of Voter Registration and Election Operations at the State Board of Elections.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
come on up.
Sure. We got Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah, get near the mic because actually
Yes,
the
Oh,
yeah,
right
there you
here.
go.
My name is Alan Norfleet. I'm the Director of Candidacy and Campaign Finance.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jen McLaughlin, and I work in mail-in voting.
Okay, Jen.
Right.
Because that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, Jared, I'm going to turn it back to you, and then floor is yours. Tell us what's on the.
Sure. So first off, I just want to start talking about some of the accomplishments that SBE and how we have evolved since my taking over in September of '23. First up, just on a little bit of a note here, we launched a new logo for the State Board of Elections. I think that it was kind of to be, modernizing it and to kind of showing a new day for elections in the state. The pattern itself has 7 stars across it, which represents Maryland being the 7th state in the union. And we have our own little motto here with the words verify, open, trusted, and empowering. If you take the first letter of each one, it spells vote. So it's a nice little logo, and it was very much a nice new branding mechanism as well. Additionally, we have reorganized the state board a little bit to kind of reflect the realities of election administration. We have, as you heard, we have a mail-in ballot director now because of how important that is. So that is not just, it's a standalone project and has its own little office. We have an audits division now for the integrity of the election. And we've had a new position, which we finally filled, which was a CISO officer. In the past, it was always an outside office, but now having your chief information security officer in-house is a huge accomplishment. We now know that that person is 100% with the state and only has the state's interest and voters in mind. So I think that that's important. In the future here, we're going to have a communications director because I was all over the place there at one point there, and it's nice to just have in-house communications. That will be a position that will be split between us and the LBEs to help the LBEs with communication.
Hey, Jared, just real quick.
Yes.
Be careful with because it'd be between the acronym thing, so a lot of people won't know what an LBE is, so just try to.
Local Board of Elections. Sorry, yes. And so that will be a joint position, and I think that that will be great for everyone to have one office to help with outreach and communications with the press. One of the things is that we all know that the state is facing a budget crunch. Elections is doing its portion along the lines there. So we have downsized and relinquished office space. This is a cost savings to the state in these difficult times. And it actually helped boost morale a little bit too, because now they know that, we are a firm believer in hybrid telework for our personnel. It has been quite successful. And it's just a nice cost savings as well. We don't need to have that big of a footprint going forward with it. One of the things of my accomplishments was I visited each local board of elections and their warehouses during this period. And it was a great, seeing all the offices, their problems, and listening to their concerns. I plan on visiting them every off election year. So I'm going to start up again in '25, maybe after the ice storm here, before I head out to Garrett County or any of those big counties out there, but I plan on visiting them again. We established the Maryland Election Administration Education Program, and this program here is to provide classes to election officials and staff to keep them up to date on current issues, and this will provide them with confidence and knowledge to provide efficient, secure, and reliable elections in Maryland. This has been beneficial to the election directors on handling multiple issues, and it's also been extremely beneficial with the turnover problem that we've faced not only in Maryland, but nationally as well, because now there's a mechanism for class and education for new directors to get a part of it so they get caught up to speed. Additionally here, we have had improved relationships with the local boards of elections. One of the first things I did when I spoke with the local boards and their directors was that I wanted to have no daylight between the state board and the local boards. The success of one is the success of all, and when one fails, we all fail. because elections is not treated as a one-off. We are treated as a unit, and I want to keep that as going forward with it. So I think that is very important, and they have taken very much into that. We have had more coordination with the local boards of elections. We did daily check-ins during election periods, and then we did even more frequent check-ins with the new election directors to make sure that they weren't feeling like they were lost or anything to that effect. I believe that Katie was very instrumental in helping them out. It's been great having her as a deputy, as one of a former election director, to help them and guide them through that. Additionally, with their organization, the Maryland Association of Election Officials, MAO, we have worked with their new president and created with a mentoring program so that when this is even in the future here, that we're always going to have, turnover will always exist. People will be retiring, and we want to make sure that there's something institutionalized here to help new with old and keep that always going forward with it. Additionally, I've been working with them as a partner in their office moves, and we've had some new regulations on warehouses and office requirements here, which they have been very helpful with. So, but we have worked with them a lot. Additionally, I just did a few wellness check-ins with them on my own. Kind of scared a couple of local boards of directors there just because they were like, why are you calling me? I was just kind of saying, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? They were shocked. They haven't had that many phone calls from the state administrator in the past. So they after the initial shock, I think, of terror, they were kind of happy that I called them. We had 2 tabletop exercises as well, and Howard County and the Department of Emergency Management helped coordinate those for us, and they're not just a great proactive planning tool, but they also have team building aspects to it as well, because they always have funny scenarios. You always come out and, they're good food for thought, but they also make you laugh in crisis times as well. On outreach, we have been, battling dis and misinformation all the time means that we are a trusted source of information, and also means that I have to be accessible to the public, and that's doing lots of press interviews prior to, during, and after the election to make sure that Marylanders feel safe and confident in the election process. Additionally, that means building a social media presence, because not many people get their news from those sources. So it's a multi-tier attack on battling dis and misinformation. And one of the things, too, about that is being proactive than reactive. I'm very much on that front there. For example, we had 2 incidences where the texting scams were being out in other states about people saying about their voter registration information. We made sure that we had a press release immediately on that. And then also the idea of the ballot marking device and vote flipping was being circulated in other states before it came to Maryland. We were already out there making sure that we had a video as well as press releases and statements on these matters so that they know that they can feel confident in it rather than being reactive. I have also wanted to make sure that we've expanded voting opportunities to historically disenfranchised communities. I visited a correctional facility and spoke with inmates there, helping them register upon re-entry of making sure that they understood their rights. It was a very moving experience. It was in Anne Arundel County. Additionally, I designated the Native American Lifelines as a voter registration agency. This was also to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of Native Americans achieving the right to vote this election, so now that they have more opportunities to register and participate in our democracy. We have also expanded the voter address confidentiality program to ensure survivors of domestic violence the right to make their voices heard safely and securely without the risk of endangering themselves or their loved ones in that process. Secured elections. We have engaged, of course, with our federal and state partners to work collaboratively on maintaining the highest levels of security. We do weekly cyber hygiene scans of our websites and our systems from the CISA, which is the Cyber Information Security Agency. And we also do physical security checks as well on our agencies as well with grants and making sure that they're up to date as well. Of course, everything right now in battling dis and misinformation is making sure that the agency itself is being transparent as possible. We, of course, post our polling place, early voting, Dropbox plans on our websites. The Canvas schedule was posted on our websites. We're now including updates on procurements in our board meetings and our state administrators' reports. But this also means being transparent about issues as well. We had an issue in Baltimore City about memory stick management, and we had to make sure that they understood what transpired there, and making sure that the public understood that it was still safe and confident and that this is what happened. And also we had a vote discrepancy in Prince George's election in the primary, and this was discovered by a post-election audit. Again, being forthright and being about the problems there, we are moving forward and being transparent and building confidence in the election administration. This is the keystones to dispelling any dis and misinformation. Overall, I've been trying to change the culture of the State Board of Elections by being more proactive and less reactive, being a partner to the General Assembly, advocates, and the local boards of elections, looking at new technologies to see what we can do to help the election administration process, using, AI. We have language assistance programs that we did a pilot program in Prince George's, which was very successful, where people of any language was able to, if they showed up at the polls, have the ability to communicate with an election judge, because we had instant translators right then and there through apps. And we, of course, used text to cure, which is another way to expedite any sort of, I would say, problems with curing, to make sure that it, again, ease to the voter, but safe and secure methods. Overall, one of the things is about being a partner is this: I might not always agree with you on all your issues, but I'm always willing to improve the process and the voting experience, and I'm always there to listen. And all I want to do is, at the end of the day, achieve 100% voter turnout. It's a goal. I've always wanted to get that. I know that's not realistic, but that's my goal. That's the only goal that I should have as my mission. We did have some unforeseen events in 2024. First up, just kind of looking through it, was the cancellation of the poll book contract, which we inherited. Now that was in January. We had to make a decision right then and there of 2024, and that the poll book vendor delivered solution would not meet the minimum requirements to conduct a statewide election. So we had to end that contract immediately and initiate our contingency plan using the existing poll books, which were tried and true. One of the cooler things that I think I did was also I scoured the entire United States looking for additional poll books that we can find. And we found 138 of them in Georgia. So then I had to engage in a nice little contract between the State Board of Elections and the state of Georgia to procure these 138 poll books. So we now own our poll books. There is no other poll books in the country, anywhere. We own them all. So that was quite fun there. We had, of course, the special election in Prince George's County, which was in between the primary and the general. It was a vote by mail election, but that was also challenging to make sure that they were aware of what was going on and conducting an election in between two elections as well. And we had some, of course, litigation where we had early voting centers in Washington County that was delaying us, making sure that when those decisions were going to be made about the location of a early voting center out there. And in Baltimore City, we had some issues in the primary election regarding specimen ballots and people marking specimen ballots and putting them into drop boxes. One of the things after that was taking decisive actions by making a policy that all specimen ballots had to be approved or use the format of the State Board of Elections, which then cut down immensely of that issue in the general election. So we were, making sure that they're uniform across the board here. So those were some unforeseen events that we handled and met those challenges. We also had some, of course, tragic events as well. One, that Maryland did receive threatening letters from the United States Traitor Elimination Army prior to the election about, our role in making sure that the rolls were updated for voter registration. And of course, we did receive bomb threats 3 days after the election during the canvass at the local boards of elections. These are sad and tragic events, but they did not deter us from any of our missions moving forward here. And also knowing that the General Assembly and the governor had our backs with the passage of Senate Bill 480, protecting the election officials, made that sad reality a little bit easier to face. So that was kind of a little bit overview here. I just want to talk about a little bit of the future for the State Board of Elections here. We are going to try to get as many grants as possible to utilize new technology and making sure that other advances are available. One of the things, too, is as we move forward with this, more staff is needed. We have, as we have more and more elections with special, we had a lot of people that accrued a lot of extra time that they could not take. And we have a couple of single points of failure with the agency here. And anytime you have single points of failure with staff, you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. We need to make sure that we have juniors to all the seniors in there so that we have a steady pipeline moving forward with it. And I always am trying to engage a lot with the colleges to help us with that, to recruit more and more individuals into the agency as well. I am going to continue my work with the Maryland Association of Election Officials. Right now, the next up is redistricting for us to make sure that we start planning for that. You might not think about redistricting, but we start thinking about elections in 2-year periods here. 26 is pretty much done, for us. We're already thinking about 28 and then 30, then all of a sudden it's right there. And especially with redistricting is you have, with the turnover of election officials, what you're going to have now is a lot of individuals who will never have gone through a redistricting process. So by having this committee starting this, it helps, institutionalize those knowledges, puts in the standard operating practices to make sure that they're on paper so that new people can go in there and hit the ground running rather than being, feeling overwhelmed. Again, working collaboratively with them on future procurements, on the poll books, the voting systems, and the voting registration systems. And we're going to be, of course, preparing for our biannual conference this year. One of the other things, too, is that I'm going to be trying to help ERIC, which is the Electronic Registration Information Center, expand to more states. It has been much maligned recently and losing some states there, but the more states in ERIC, the better off our voter registration lists are. And then one of the things is that I want to start engaging in new technologies to help the voting experience. I'm wanting to, my vision right now is to create a digital voter registration card so that it would go into your iPhone wallet. So you would have it right there. And you would then be able to be getting your updates, say if there was a polling place change or if the pipe burst in the facility and we had to notify you about that, we can easily send texts or updates through that app or through that voter registration card digitally right into your phone rather than a text or something like that that you might not get. So one of the things is that I'm looking forward to it and trying to get that new technology out there. It's taking over this idea of what the Motor Vehicle Administration did with a digital driver's license, but making it into a digital voter registration card. And I think that that would be the wave of the future. I don't believe any other state has a digital voter registration card, and I would like to be one of the first to do that. So I am hopeful on the future of our agency, but overall, I'm always concerned about the vitriol that is directed at election directors. But that is kind of the overall arching concepts here. I have some updates on your legislation that you passed. Again, I want to thank you for passing the Protecting Election Officials Act. That has been a great recruitment tool as well. I use that a lot when talking about trying to get election judges, saying that you have protection, that don't listen to the noise that is being talked about in the press outside of the state. You have extra protections here. Senate Bill 417, which was about the election director evaluation programs, which mandates that that mandates my evaluation, but also me performing evaluations of election directors. We are beginning to do that this month, and we're going to be doing 2 a month for this entire year going forward with it. We've had the election disinformation on social media. The online portal was up and running this election, and we had over 120 cases that we received, and 5 went over to the State Board of a State prosecutor for further investigation. We did a lot of promotion of that portal, and I even did a video on it as well, because this was a great tool to have the people and voters participate in battling and combating dis and misinformation, because I'm not everywhere as much as I try to be, but I don't know what's going on your feed, because your feed is completely different than my feed. So if they saw something, they could report it to us and help us correct the records. Overall, too, one of the bigger things was about the Election Judges Revision Act. We have begun our marketing campaign now, because one of the things I did was making sure we gave a survey out to the election judges on why they became an election judge to help kickstart that. I have a feeling that younger people like the money, and older people like being civically engaged. So when I start doing online ads in the future, when we start targeting 18 to 24-year-olds, it might be more or less focusing on, hey, you can earn X amount more money, and then other ones there might be like, help democracy out, so we can start looking forward to that. On Senate Bill 115, recount procedures, we had, in fact, 2 recounts this general election, so moving forward with that. So that's where all the bills were, and us making sure that they were implemented correctly. As for an overview on turnout and trends from the 2024 election, the primary election turnout was over 1 million voters, or over 27% of eligible voters voted in the primary election. This was a little bit smaller turnout in recent primary presidential elections. In-person voting accounted for 57.5% of all voting, while early voting in person only accounted for 14.86% of that, with Election Day accounting for nearly 43% of the voting. Mail-in voting in the primary accounted for 39% of voter turnout. So it was very much a heavy mail turnout election there. I will get to you about trends of what I feel about that very soon. The general election we had over 3 million people, or a little over 72% of eligible voters voted. And the breakdown was in-person voting accounted for 70% of all voting, with early voting accounting for roughly 32%, and Election Day accounting for a little bit under 38% of voting. Mail-in voting accounted for about a little bit over 25%, but provisional voting was 5%. It was our highest number of provisional ballots out there. So here's my quick analysis of post-COVID voting in Maryland. And let me just say this is only because we only have 2 data points here, because anything prior to COVID is, I would say, irrelevant at this time here, and the election of 2020 is just an outlier to begin with because of COVID. So first up, Marylanders like voting early, before Election Day. Roughly 55% chose to vote early. Mail-in voting is here to stay. In the general election, if you just look at the raw numbers, nearly 880,000 mail-in ballots were sent. That is basically 1 in 5 voters requested a mail-in ballot for the general election. And over 630,000 were sent in the primary election. Again, that's roughly 17% of all eligible voters requesting a mail-in ballot. That's all eligible, not just who voted. Of the nearly 600,000 that are on the permanent mail-in ballot list, 31% are in the 45 to 65 age range, and 45% of the 600,000 are 65 and older. So 76% of all people on the permanent mail-in ballot list are 45 or older. So you can see, I think that's, that's significant here. One of the things, too, with mail-in ballot is web ballot delivery. That hovers around 12 to 16% of all mail-in ballot requests. When I did a deeper dive, age is not a determining factor in the requests themselves. It's kind of it kind of sprawls out here. About 16% are delivered to the 24 and under crowd. 30% is delivered between 25 and 44. 32% requests were made in the 45 to 65 age range, and 22% were for 65 and older. So age is kind of all over the place. For web ballot delivery, it's clearly the preferred method of military and overseas voters, with 73% receiving their ballots web delivered in the general election. There is a concern with web ballot delivery for volume as we keep on growing here, especially for canvassing, because it occurs for duplication. I am now looking at technical solutions to help with the local boards of election and provide greater information to the voters on what is actually needed for a web ballot delivery, so that they understand what is required. It requires a printer, it requires envelopes, it requires a stamp, things that you might not think that you like. But if you don't use printers and scanners and mail and stamps, it's funny how you forget about that type of concept. I always, it's always like, that's the old way of doing things. Like, why can't I email it back? You just can't. Another thing for concern is that the rate of return is less than mail ballot deliveries. So that is something, too, that I want to look at to see why or how it comes about. But again, age wasn't necessarily a determining factor there, but, maybe providing more information along the lines there. Another trend or analysis I saw was that mail-in voting has not replaced in-person voting as a preferred method. Again, in-person voting continues to be the primary way that voters vote. But, again, it has been a very significant portion of it. Additionally here, election timing may impact the method of voting. There does seem to be a trend where more voters vote by mail in the primary election than in the general election. For instance, the primary in 2022 was 33.5% of the voters voted by mail. And then in this general election here, you had in the primary election, nearly 39% voted by mail. This could be a result that the primary elections are held during the summer when most voters are vacationing. So, when you hold elections might impact how elections are actually administered. Overall, we are trying to look to see how voters are going to vote in the new normal post-COVID. Again, by and large, I believe that they prefer to vote in person, but voting by mail is a very popular method of voting for Marylanders. And overall, too, we are seeing more with provisional voting, too, as well as that increasing as well. Provisional voting for the general election was historically high. We had almost 150,000 voters cast provisional ballots in the general elections. This was due to a large number who voted on election day at a polling place rather than their assigned polling place, or received mail-in ballot and chose to vote in person instead. And again, we're going to take a look at that and where that occurred. Sometimes it occurred mostly at colleges, in those vicinities as well. We saw a high influx, of course, in Montgomery, Prince George's, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City. This is something where we might have to start using and becoming more proactive in our education with college students, especially the ones that are in-state students, but are now housed at College Park, for example. Individuals also using same-day voter registration was very popular in the 2024 general election. We saw a huge surge in same-day voter registration. And these figures are just staggering when we did a deep dive here. So prior to the 2024 election, almost 58,000 individuals had registered to vote, and over 26,000 voters had used it to change their address as a result of the process. So that's from the start, which was basically 2016 through 2022. In the 2024 general election alone, we had nearly 58,000 individuals register and vote during early voting or on election day. So it was 58,000, nearly 58,000 new individuals using same-day voter registration. And we had over 7,500 use it to update their addresses during early voting. So basically, almost as many people had used early voting, the same-day voter registration, in the presidential general election as they had done since the law was enacted. That's amazing for this one election here. I don't consider that trend to continue, but it's something to where and how. But it was, to me, that's one of the benefits of this. There are now these individuals who were not able to have their right to participate were able to. Some more information that I just wanted to say about some data here is that we had 97 early voting centers. We had 1,500 polling places, 286 drop boxes. For the election, we had over 4,700 unique primary ballot styles and nearly 2,000 general election ballot styles to create, print, and deploy. Voter education was a big push for me. We engaged in an aggressive voter outreach campaign focusing on voter registration and, of course, the 3 ways to vote: early, by mail, and on election day. We had developed a dynamic, user-friendly landing page with various deadlines associated with each of those of registration and mail and voting. One of the nice features of the web page itself was that we had a calendar right then and there that could upload right onto your phone with instant reminders for you. So you can say, would you like to add that to your calendar? You can click those dates so you can remind yourself, oh, early voting is during this window here. I want to request a mail-in ballot. This is the deadline for make sure that I can request it for that so that it can seamlessly put up there. We did paid outreach. We had over 100 TV spots, over 450 radio spots, which had about 2.8 million impressions. We did 13 print ads in newspapers. And then, of course, the digital component, which is the real impressive stuff here. We had digital ads generated over 26 million impressions. We had about 7.3 million plays of digital ads on Facebook and Instagram, and we were reaching 2.8 million Meta accounts of Maryland voters. And those are significant because those 2.8, remember that there is only 4.1 million registered voters. So we knew exactly that we were, targeting and really making sure that as many Marylanders were able to understand this. So that alone had established over 10 million impressions. And, you know, it was just an amazing outreach campaign to make sure that as many Marylanders were able to see and to know what was going on as possible. One of the other things, too, is election judges and pages. For the primary and the general election, we had almost 23,000 election judges, staff, early voting, and election day polling places. And in the primary election, 76 were returning election judges, and in the general election, 93% were returning election judges. So it was fantastic. The election day page program, I encouraged the local boards to reach out to schools to help recruit students and serve. We had approximately 446 page applicants that were across the board, including my youngest. She had nothing better to do, and I didn't want her to sit in home, so she was up there being a page with my oldest, who was an election judge because she had aged out of it, so they loved that. My oldest did like the check, though, at the end of it, so. While not all the counties are participating in the PAGE program, I look forward to expanding that when we move forward with it for 2026. I also want to address that the election judge issue was a contentious issue for the 2024 election. Election judges administer elections without regards to partisanship, and they are prohibited from engaging in partisan or political activity during their work as an election judge. They are trained on how to conduct the necessary tasks to keep the polling place running efficiently and effectively and throughout the days. So this does not, at all affect the voters' experience in the voting room. An election judge party affiliation does not impact or determine the outcome of elections. The voters are the only ones who decide the outcomes of the elections. Party affiliation of an election judge does not stop them from casting their ballots or disenfranchise a voter. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, again, stated for the record, and that all 2,300 election judges and pages did unbelievably well in administering this election. The canvass, again, we started the canvass prior to Election Day, and that assisted a lot in meeting expectations of producing vote totals of a significant number for Election Day once the polls closed. This, of course, is contingent on voters returning them as quickly as possible to us. But, however, due to the unprecedented volume of provisional ballots, the duplication efforts of web ballot deliveries and partial counts for provisional voting, a lot of manual processing and review had to be done post-Election Day, and that impacted, of course, our certification deadlines. Again, I was very proactive about that, seeing that some local boards were not going to be able to meet the 10-day certification deadline period. We did a press release about that to make sure to assuage any fears about what that meant, that every vote would be counted, and that, so that we basically wanted to make sure that we were going to keep on counting all the way through. We had one county that certified on December 5th, which was the longest it ever took to certify an election. But I want to publicly acknowledge the tremendous efforts of the election directors, their staff, and the local boards on making sure that it was going through. Post-election audits. Once you have an election and it gets certified, before it gets certified, we wanted to make sure that we, of course, do an automated audit of ballot images by an outside independent vendor, which is 100%, of course, on every ballot image. Now all those details are up on our website for anybody to see. We also are going to conduct a manual post-election audit of a selection of full precincts by county and early voting day at one location, and a sampling of provisional and mail-in ballots are going to be hand tallied, and the local boards of elections have until March to complete this audit. So it's open to the public, so bring some popcorn. it's just quite riveting. Additionally, we performed a pilot risk limiting audit in Harford County this year, and that went unbelievably well. Now some procurement updates, because I know that that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. We have MD Chris, which is the campaign finance reporting system. We have a new vendor, and the transition planning has begun. So we are looking forward to, seamlessly transitioning into a new vendor without affecting any sort of problems with reporting moving forward with it. The poll book modernization project, as I mentioned earlier, we had to use existing poll books for the 2024 election, which we are also going to be using the same existing poll books for the 2026 election. But we have a project team that has been onboarded. The request for proposal was submitted to the Department of Information Technology and was approved. So we're just moving on to now second phases to get bids and to move forward with that procurement. The new voting system, we are, of course, starting that as well. The project team has been onboarded. However, after some consideration on this, the state board made an announcement that regarding the future of elections in Maryland and consultation with the local boards of elections, the decision on procuring a new voting system for the 2026 election was reached, and that due to the marketplace not being ripe because of the voluntary voter system guidelines from the EAC 2.0 standards, there has not, from the Election Assistance Commission, they have not certified any vendors to the highest standards here, so that any voting system award that would be used for the 2026 election would be certified to the older standards. So in order to allow for greater competition among vendors, we are going to seek to replace and implement the new voting system for the 2028 elections. But this is not going to delay the procurement process one bit, and we're moving forward with it now with onboarding it, getting the specs moving, and getting all the proper procedures in place. This will allow greater time for the local boards of elections to review and test the voting systems for certification. So this is currently, I think, a plus for us as we move forward with it. And finally, we're in the process of, procuring a new voter registration and election management system, and that's on track for, of course, redistricting efforts, but as that's just moving forward with it. Campaign finance, near and dear to my heart here. You guys are back in session, so no more fundraising for you. So turn off those buttons. Your annual report is due on the 15th, so make sure you talk to your treasurers to get that finalized, moving forward with it. We're updating the summary guide here with all the new laws and regulations that will be released this winter. And one of the things is that we've used in the past was that appointment system for candidate filings to eliminate wait times. We had over 860 candidate filings for the 2024 election, and it has been a great tool for both the candidate as well as for the administration of the filings. So we're going to continue that for the 2026 election. We have currently over 1,900 active committees, but I expect that number to increase between 23 to 25 active committees for your election as we move forward. And I expect to see, again, an increase in independent expenditure entities. In enforcement actions, we collected $155,665 in civil penalties in 2024. We had also collected over $100,000 in late fees on political committees and $25,000 in entities that do business with the state. We also completed in 2024 an audit of the 2024 annual report where 353 committees were sent deficiency letters. Public financing has been growing in the state of Maryland. One of the things is that the election law article requires that the State Board of Election determine whether the balance of the Fair Campaign Finance Fund, which is the vehicle that finances public financing candidates at the state level, has sufficient public funds for 2 eligible gubernatorial candidates in the primary and 1 in the general, which means about $9 million to ensure that the fund has been fully funded for the 2026 election. While in June of 23, when we had to send the letter, the current balance was under that $9 million. We had to ask for appropriation of nearly $600,000. But however, due to our great enforcement actions here, we are now above $9 million. We're almost nearly at $10 million. For everything. So this is going to be the first time in the program's history that it will be fully funded. And remember, this is accomplished without any interest allocations because they're all directed to the general fund for budget relief. Again, us helping out the state as much as we can. On the county effort, Baltimore City, this in 2024 had its first election with a public financing program. We help support that, with providing public funds for candidates for mayor, city council president, and the city council. There were 8 candidates that participated, 4 were certified, and 1 was actually elected. The program distributed over $1.1 million to certified candidates. In 2026, we are looking at 4 counties that are going to have public financing programs that will be up and running. Montgomery, Howard, Baltimore County, Prince George's will all have their finance programs up and running with the state. And Anne Arundel County right now is in the early stages of setting up their public financing program. So we'll see if they're up and ready for the 2026 elections. And of course, we are working with the county officials to develop their summary guide, frequently asked questions, and outreach programs. Looking to the 2026 and 2028 elections here, it's amazing when you, at the end of this year, February 25th of this year will open up candidate filings for the 2026 election. So it's already started, for us. And one of the things, too, is that I want to expand language assistant programs to more places, at polling places that was quite successful in Prince George's County. We have already kind of expanded voter assistance and languages with voter registration and mail-in ballot applications. They're already on our website in multiple languages for them already there. Some concerns as I look forward to the 2026 election. Of course, top of the list is dis and misinformation because of the viral nature of deepfakes and the use of artificial intelligence to manipulate voters' intent or going to the polls. And of course, the high number of provisional voting, making sure that we go through that. In 2028, I want to put this on someone's radar already, which is the date of the primary election in 2028 is April 25th, which means early voting will be over the Easter holiday. So just kind of, if you guys want to start looking at your calendar for 2028, happy to kind of go through that there. But one of the things was in this last election when we were trying to scramble for it, there was a little bit of voter confusion as to the date. That's why I think we were so aggressive in the outreach for the 2024 election, because we were scrambling to move it because of religious holidays. So as we were preparing for the calendars as we move forward with it, that's what we discovered. Some considerations now for the 2025 legislative session. I want to thank the chair for sponsoring my 4 departmental bills. So I look forward for all your support on those. And of course, working with the vice chair on the municipal election bill here to make sure that the municipalities that they want to have support from the State Board of Elections, that we can continue to provide that support in a legal and safe manner for everyone involved. With that, again, I went through everything for the elections. And I open up for questions. So thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with the vice chair. She does have some important questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was taking copious notes. Jared, first let me start by saying thank you for such a comprehensive briefing, and even more than that, thank you for all that you've done. You know that I had issues with your predecessor, and so it's a new day in terms of transparency, communication, collaboration with the local boards of election. There's so many great things that you have already changed, and I really want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate Katie, coming from Carroll County as the elections director there, and the rest of your wonderful team. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for all that you've done to upgrade. So got to start by saying Maryland has great elections. They are thorough, transparent, inclusive, and accurate, and all of that just must be said all the time. And we always have ways of tweaking things a little bit and doing things a little better. You talked about a lot of issues, so let me start, because you ended with fiscal stuff. Let me start, the communications director, this new person coming in. You talked about the voter education. We had a big contract and hired a firm. Will that still be used, or will the communications person do the radio, the TV, the graphics, the social media, all that? So as we're working on budgets, can we just start with that really small issue?
So I still think you always need to have an outside vendor to help with the production of the campaign, placing the ads. I think that this is more internal to help us with media requests, making sure that there's outreach calendars for community events, and also Public Information Act requests so that they can handle that. And so it helps facilitate that and also give a more of a project manager element to the outside reach campaign. And so it's to, I would say, enhance and help direct some of these marketing campaigns.
Great. You were good enough to give us some data on the internet requested ballots, but one of the things that we've been waiting for is the response rate. People who ask for the mail-in ballots tend to return them at a very high rate. People who ask for internet delivered ballots, and this committee knows well, and we had hearings and legislation on this, and you referenced, they don't realize that they need a printer. They need to have a postage stamp, a number 10 envelope. They need to be able to return it. I wonder when we're going to expect to see the drop-off, which we know is significant, in return rates for those who do internet-delivered ballots. So that's question one. And then related to that, I know that Montgomery County did a special outreach mailing to voters who had a permanent request for mail-in ballots. And we know that some people, once they say, yeah, I think it's going to be easy because I shop online, vote online, or shop online, date online, bank online, who knew?
Right.
Like they thought it would be easy, and then it's not easy to vote online. And that's not what it is. So encouraging them to rethink their decision. How many other counties did that, and do we have the general statewide numbers, and then whether there was an impact, reduced numbers of requests for people who decided to vote with using a mail-in ballot?
So Montgomery was the one that did the extra step on that front. They were the only ones that did that. But yes, the rate of return was less than the participation turnout rate. And so web ballot delivery was in the low 70s, whereas by mail was in the high 80s. And yes, that is a concern. It's historically always been a case there. Once again, it's something about it, maybe more education to the voter. It is a safe and secure method of voting. It's been a part of the General Assembly and policy here, so that's something that you can deliberate on. But to me, it's a method that I will make sure that they have access to, and I think having a little bit more education on that front there, that this is not, you have to still mail it back to us. I think we saw that in the primary where there was a little bit of a dip once we started putting check boxes in front of it so that they understood, do you have your own printer? Do you have this? Do you have these, rather than just at the end of the process, starting it at the beginning. And it's another stuff that we will fine tune as we move forward with it as well.
So as you know, Jared, but I'm just going to say it for public consumption here, that the challenges for the voter in casting their vote is only the beginning of the problem with internet-delivered ballots. Because then, once they come to the local boards of elections, they have to be manually duplicated by bipartisan teams. It's very time-consuming and expensive. So there are two components to that, which is, so the fact that people are voting at a lower number, and then the burden that that places on our local boards, I think just continues to be, needs to be part of our conversation.
Yes.
So I may have other questions, but Mr. Chair, I see that other colleagues have questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go to Senator Gallion. I got to step out to do a little meeting in the back, so you're going to finish this up. Senator Gallion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for, looking forward and talking about technology with the message on your cell phone stuff. It's really good to hear that you're thinking a couple steps ahead like that, so thank you for that. I just had a couple questions. One colleague this morning reached out to me, Senator Mounts, and honestly, I'm not familiar at all with this issue, but he asked me to reach out. So
Sure.
There were some questions, concerns in Talbot County about the appointment of election judges. Can you kind of give an update on that, and then then I can have him follow up with you if it doesn't.
Sure. Like I mentioned before, it was about the partisan divide of election judges. And again, election judges perform their work in a nonpartisan fashion. It's basically, at the end here, we've had AG opinions that says, you have to open up with election judges and the party affiliations that you have. I think recruitment is our #1 issue to get election judges. And we try to achieve an equal distribution of partisanship on the election judges, but voter registration rolls are different for each county. You look at a Montgomery County, the registration rate is tilted to one party versus another. You look at a Washington County, it's the opposite. You're expected then to achieve, equal numbers. You can barely get the same. It's not even on the voter registration rolls the correct way there. But none of the activities that an election judge does affects the outcome of the elections. Only the voters do. And I think that there was a lot of disinformation about that. We issued our statement. The Attorney General had weighed in on that as well, in that issue there. So, they performed admirably, and they conducted the election in a nonpartisan fashion.
Okay, so if he has any follow-ups, I'll have him reach out to you directly. The other thing is on the timing of counting the votes. Just to kind of as a refresher, you have 10 days after the election to get those mail-in ballots in. Do they have to be postmarked by Election Day?
Yes.
Okay, so that kind of gives a little 10-day window there. You also mentioned that some of the counties weren't able to really certify till the 5th of December.
That's one county.
Okay, so my question is, so I represent Cecil County in addition to Hartford, and their county executive was sworn in on December 2nd.
Yes.
So if they run into some issues there, how would that work? I mean, if they're getting sworn in 3 days before the whole state does a certification,
So those offices are basically, when the county certifies that election, then they are able to be certified or be able to be sworn in. If the county waits beyond that date, to certify their election, then they would have to wait until the certification occurs before they would be able to be sworn in. It did occur in the one county that impacted school board with that, because the certification was after when they were supposed to be sworn in, but the Constitution says that until the successor is duly elected, the current board or the current officer would stay into that position until that time. We worked extremely hard to make sure that everyone tries to certify by that 10th day. But there's always delays, again, with the high number of provisional voting, the duplication efforts. That does impact the canvas afterwards. But again, we are always trying to fine tune and work through the process to move forward with it.
So the final numbers everywhere except that one county were pretty well in 10 days after the election then?
Some of them hit the 10 days, some of them hit the day after that.
As I'm sure everybody in this room on
Exactly.
election,
There's always room,
everybody in this room on election night, this crowd was checking out election results across the country as they came in. You kind of see how it seems like in states like Arizona, they're forever getting those numbers in, and it's frustrating for people that want to know results. You have a state like Florida who, everybody remembers the 2000 election with the hanging chads and all that stuff, and it took forever. And then they did a lot of changes, and then now, I mean, Florida has election night, who won that state.
Yeah.
So is there anything that we can do in this state to get us more towards that where we know sooner those final results?
So I think when you pass the law to start the canvass early helped a lot, because as the state is moving more towards mail-in voting, by starting it early, we then can start processing it, making sure that there's any issues, contacting the voters to see if there's any deficiencies for curing purposes at a sooner rate. And it relieves some of the burden of post-election canvass. So when we had it, you still had, for this general election, you had a significant number that was released. You had almost a million early votes, in-person early votes, over 1.1 million election day voting that was released, as well as, I think, 400 or 500,000 mail-in ballots. So there was a significant number of a percentage on election day that we were able to release, which is to meet those expectations of, I would say, voters wanting to know who won or lost on election day. But, we are trying to make sure that we meet those expectations.
Okay, just one quick follow-up. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I guess in some of those states, and I don't know if this has been debated much here or not, are there certain areas where those ballots have to be received by Election Day? Would that make, that's a big difference, a 10-day difference there. Is that, I'm not familiar with all the other states' laws.
Every state has their own unique laws about that. Some states do have it as that they have to be received on Election Day. Other states have it that it's postmarked, but the window is a lot less. I think one of the things that the 2024 election nationally, one of the trends was that there was, I would say, consternation about mail-in ballots due to the fact that the post office was at one point saying that closer to the election that they were unable to deliver certain ballots in a time period. This is where I was talking to doing outreach with press to assure voters that by putting it in on election day or the day before that it was postmarked, that we have a 10-day window. So when the post office was talking about we might not make it in the 3-day or 4-day window, we had extra comfort here in the state of Maryland, assuring that they would be arriving by that 10th day. So I think we mitigated any potential, I would say, delays by the U.S. Postal Service due to that 10-day window. So while, yes, that's a longer period, I think it benefits the voters knowing that they can cast their ballot using the post office on election day, making sure that it was postmarked on that date, that it would be counted by the 10th day.
Thank you, Senator Gallion, for the questions. I just want to add on, Jared. So 2 things. One is, remember, 10 days is also allowing our military personnel to make sure that if they are serving our nation abroad, that their ballot can come back in time and be included. The second thing is, I think it's a really good reminder that we should all be putting the word out about drop-off boxes, because the post office has been having problems and they don't always postmark all the envelopes anymore for whatever reason, and that causes problems. So using the local drop-off box in your community is a great way of securely and in a timely manner making sure that your ballot is in and counted. Fair? Jared?
Yeah, very fair. I love drop boxes. I think they're great.
I do
I want to have more.
Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and Administrator Demarinis and team here. Thank you. I want to follow up on your earlier comments in your introduction where you mentioned the increased interaction with the local election offices. And I would like to reinforce that. We have the situation in Somerset County that we're working through, potential future move, and I don't think that not only locally is there always an understanding of with the elections process and a move like that, all the security and the criteria that are involved at both the state and federal level. It's not just your normal Department of General Services office move. And so I think, what you're doing in Somerset County and, letting them know that you are available on the front end to work through potential locations. But I not only wanted to ask you to continue that effort on office moves, but I also believe that there's benefit for you at the state level to have that increased interaction with the local employees. I don't always, particularly when you're out, in the rural counties, that you always have the benefit of all the professional development and programs that might be available. And there's sometimes confusion on if these employees are county employees or state employees, and there's confusion with the county commissioner sometimes. And I just think if I can make the request that in addition to providing that check-in on office moves or, as something new is implemented in the process, that we also make sure that the staff has been trained and has the additional support that they might need from at the state level.
Sure.
And if you want to comment, maybe you're doing some of that already, but I have, I didn't want to limit my question just to the office moves.
So one of the things is that I've started to, work also with MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties, and give them periodic briefings. So we do one with their budget officers, and then also with the elected officials in that county there, just so that they can understand what's going on, where our bills are coming from, what procurements are in the pipeline there. So I'll be happy to kind of do that also with personnel, saying, 20 of the 24 jurisdictions, they're state employees. And, the equipment that they are housing at this is all state equipment. We are purchasing it. Here are the regulations. So, yes, I'm happy to work with them and that organization to help facilitate that and move forward with it.
But as I said, I'd like it to go beyond just office moves, but even into, whatever other professional training, might be available as well.
Yes. Yes, well, that's why we're starting up that education program as well, to help them with the staff to make sure that they have it there. Because especially the smaller counties where they only have a couple of employees, and when one walks out the door, there's a lot of knowledge that walks out the door too, and they don't necessarily have all the redundancies in place there. So that's why one of these things with the mentoring and all these programs here that we're helping them as well.
And just one last point, Madam Vice Chair, because you brought it to my attention, especially in the smaller rural counties where you only have a couple people, when you do have those vacancies where someone's been there for many years and there's, an opening that there may not be a lot of understanding of what that position involves, even whether is it a county position, is it a state position, what's involved, all the security and election integrity issues that are involved. So I don't know in those cases where that might be an example where you can be a little bit more involved in providing that support on the front end during that, maybe during that interview process.
So yes, so it was one of the things with that law as well, was that I have the ability now to be a part of and provide comments to the local boards of elections in the hiring of the election director. So I think that was one of the greater additions there, to have that input in from the State Board of Elections helping them, because the local boards of elections, the members themselves don't necessarily have the day-to-day expertise of what is required for an election director, and I will be able to provide that information to them in their selection process.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I see that none of my other colleagues have more questions, but you know that I do.
Of course.
So I'm going to ask for quick answers, but we work so closely together on election
Is this
stuff.
like one of those like speed rounds here,
This is
where we just
speed
go back and
round.
forth here, one word
Okay.
answers back?
I see ranked choice voting represented here in the room. As you are looking at new voting equipment, you talked about procurement and new technology. Can you just super briefly talk about whether we are looking, as in budget language, making sure that any new voting machines would be RCV, ranked choice voting compliant?
So the current voting system, I've spoken with the vendor about this, can handle a ranked choice voting ballot.
Yes.
It's the tabulation portion of it that they cannot handle. So that part always has to be outside of it, and would be a procurement needed, because, you know, we can produce a ballot with, you know, vote, you know, your first choice, second choice, third choice, 15th choices. That's fine, and it would get all the data and the data stick. The current system can handle that. It just can't tabulate, oh, after the first choice, what gets eliminated, then retally for the second choice, what gets eliminated, and
But there's
retally.
software that can be purchased that's affordable, and then we own it. So
Yes.
just want to
Right.
put that out there. Okay, second somewhat lightning round. Eric, just for those who don't know, the Electronic Registration Information Center, and I've been working at this at the national level. I just want to briefly, Eric's mission is to help states improve the accuracy of America's voter rolls, increase access to voter registration for all eligible citizens, reduce election costs, and increase efficiencies in elections. I hear nothing that is partisan or ideological in that. You said that you are helping at the national level to try to improve ERIC and all that, as some states are opting to get out, including our neighbor in Virginia.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Governor Youngkin's decision to take Virginia out means that Maryland's voter rolls are less accurate, which makes me crazy. So can you say what you're doing, what the prospects are, and how ERIC is going to do? Or is there an alternative tool that you're looking at and considering?
So with Eric, we're always looking to help expand that. You know, I always write letters of support whenever there's a bill that is being proposed in any of the general assemblies. As for Virginia, I am in communication with my counterpart in Virginia and working on an MOU for data exchange to help us, you know, go through that to see what's moving forward with it. So they have engaged, Virginia has engaged their neighbor states, and so now we are going to engage with them about that to see, making sure that, you know, because moving between Maryland and Virginia is very easy, so we're going to work on that in 2025.
I think this committee would be really interested in hearing more about that as
Sure.
we get ready for the next election. We want to make sure our voter rolls are accurate.
Yes.
Okay. And my last thing, and it's more a statement than a question, there have been people who have approached me about the possible timetable schedule for the 2026 elections. You talked about how when people are on summer vacation, they don't vote as much. We also have Father's Day and Juneteenth and lots of reasons why people might be distracted from voting. So you and I can have a conversation about that, but I think there are valid questions that are being asked about our preliminary dates
Right.
that we're looking at.
As long as this is the perfect time to do
Yes.
it, because we don't want to make the changes next session. If we can make any changes to the 2026 calendar, let's do it this time around. I'd be
Yep.
happy to kind of work through that.
Dynamite. Senator Carozza?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is a question that's come up from my constituents, and it's not to have a debate on the voter ID issue. But the question my constituents have asked me is, and it's more of a process question on what the state guidance is. If someone comes up to vote and give their name, and the person checking them in suspects that it may not be that individual, and of course you can't ask for ID, is there any guidance or direction that, that
So-
you all provide to those on the front lines?
So every political party candidate, individual has the right to enter a polling place and challenge a voter based upon identity. And then they would then fill out a form, and then the challenge would be made. The individual then would have to prove their identity at that point. So if that occurs, Maryland law already has in it the ability to ensure that challenge exists.
But you're leaving that up to a candidate to challenge?
Well, there's
My
challengers-
question was your individuals that are checking people in.
So that
if
is-
that individual just has an inkling that something may be amiss here, is there, and can't ask for.
So an election
Identify-
judge would be considered an individual then at that point, and then they would have to go through the process of as being a challenger. Just because they're an election judge doesn't mean that they don't have that right as an individual to perform the challenge under the challenge law. But they would still have to follow through and state the reason why they believe that this individual is not who they say they are.
So that person on the front lines could do that. But I guess my question is, I'm really just trying to understand if, in good faith, the person checking in the voter has just a suspicion, but they can't ask for the ID, is there anything they can do? Are you saying the only thing they can
So
do
those-
is do a challenge?
So I would say you're going into this as a policy argument about voter ID, and I think that that's best for debated by.
No, I'm not. I made a point to say,
Yeah,
my
but
point is there any process that individual has
So.
other than an official challenge? That's my question. It's a process question.
So then the answer is, the only thing is the official challenge. Because,
Okay,
and that is, because at that point there, the individual themselves, we wanted to make sure that the right to vote is, secure, safe, but also is, not, I would say, objected to or trying to use vehicles to disenfranchise voters. And so Maryland, as a policy, has the only way for this would be to challenge a voter in that process and using that law on on challenging voters.
That's the current process.
That's the only current process.
That was my question. Thank you.
You good? Okay. I see no other questions from my colleagues, and Jared, I know you and I will talk many
Exactly.
times, and
Thank you.
Katie. I think this was a very informative and important exchange of information, so I also, on behalf of the chair and all of us who care about our democracy, thank you for your leadership and thank you for today's briefing. If there's nothing else, Lemuria, this briefing and this committee meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, take care.
Of me or of them? Okay. Okay.
No more questions.
That wasn't for me to do. That was a chair. You should totally talk to Brian about it. Ooh, good question. That's a Lemuria question. That's probably the equivalent of green, yellow, red, you're running out of time, rather than the timer. That's my guess. That's just guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't have that in the paper.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks. Perfect.
Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Thanks, you too.
And I know there's a lot of news about men not being fast productions anymore, and it's such a huge information source for Gen X and really so many people. And I was wondering if there's anything that you as a group can work on towards that. I know it's a separate organization, but truly makes sense for that.
Sorry, hold on. Just a quick comment. I don't want to interrupt you. Good job. Really great job.
Make sure I got everything.
You men, you went on. I was in, I do a lot on that. I was eating it up. I was like, oh, goodness, I have a million questions. It's like, oh, check the box, check the box, check the box. And you knew, like, I was going to be asking about it. And that was like, okay, I'm going to go deeper on this one, but like, yeah, no, you covered it. Good job. See. Thank you, Nola. Sorry. Okay.
So-
Jack.
How are you doing?
Hey. We have the gun. This is one of my, hey, Alan. Nice to meet you in person. I know. Yay.
On content.
It was
on
so-
social media platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like Facebook said.
There was a human.
There was.